Hey guys, welcome back to a homegrown journey. Today I'm going to talk about tomato seed saving. One of this week's jobs is saving tomato seeds ready for next year. So all of my tomato plants have now come in, they all got blight, so I've taken them down now and saved what I can. But even if you hadn't been struck by blight, it's now the weather's turning, it's getting a lot colder, and it's about time to kind of start taking in those last crops of tomatoes and maybe ripening them indoors where you can. This year I have decided I'm only going to save one variety because next year I really want to try loads of new ones. So I'm going to buy in a lot of new seed for kind of either a paste tomato or some nice new red cherries or kind of slicing tomatoes. But the one that I definitely want to save this year is my green grape tomato. So this is a tomato seed that I actually originally got from my mum, who in turn got it from somewhere else. So I don't actually know if I could buy this. I haven't looked at that closely. It might have a different name, but I know it is a green grape tomato and it never actually goes ripe. It's a really cool one. So it does go ripe, but it stays green. It takes a slightly yellow tinge when it's ready. But it's one of both mine and my wife's favourite tomatoes since we started growing it the last couple of years. So I really want to make sure I've got a seed on hand so I can include it in my kind of growing plans next year. So when you are saving your seed, you want to make sure that you pick tomatoes from really good plants. So I've actually picked some from plants that were particularly blight resistant this year and lasted a lot longer than my other plants. And because that's like a good trait that I want to pass forward. I only had 2 or 3 to be fair. All of the green grape did really well against the blight this year. But if you have got a lot, pick your kind of healthiest, strongest plants that provided the most fruit, because those are the ones that you want to grow again next year. The other thing you want to make sure is that you haven't got a hybrid plant. So some seeds or kind of hybrid seeds or F1 seeds are actually a combination of 2 different plants, which might produce a kind of specific result when you're growing the ones that you've bought. But if you save the seeds from those and grow them again next year, what you get won't be true to form. So you won't actually be growing what you kind of grew the previous year. And sometimes that's fine, but quite often you'll end up with kind of a bitter or unpleasant fruit that you won't really enjoy eating as much. So in those cases, you always need to buy new seed each year if you want to grow the same tomato again. But if you've got a heritage variety or a variety that isn't a hybrid, then you should be fine to save the seed. And the process itself is really easy, and I'm going to show it to you now. So it does take a few days, but it's very minimal effort. Most of it is just waiting around. So the first thing we do is we're going to cut these tomatoes up. So I've got 3 that I'm going to use to save seeds from. That'll be more than enough for what I need this year. I only plant a handful of each variety each year. So we're going to cut them and we're going to remove the seeds from the flesh. Now, if you know tomatoes, you'll know that the seeds are kind of covered in this like gelatinous material. So the first thing that we've got to do is get rid of that material because it basically is a breeding ground for diseases. It can harbour bacteria, and so we want it off the seeds so that we can kind of store dry seeds which will last much longer. And it's a really easy process, so I'll show you what I'm doing now. As you can see, there's really not much equipment required in order to save some tomato seeds. I've got a knife and a spoon which is going to help me cut the tomatoes and scoop out the seeds, and then I've just got a small glass of water. You can use a jar or a bowl or anything you've got really, with about 1 centimetre to 1/2 centimetre of water in the bottom. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to cut each of these tomatoes in half. As you can see, they're really ripe, which is good, which is what we want. They look absolutely brilliant there. So I'm going to cut all 3 in half. So as you can see, we've now got 3 hard tomatoes. You can see in here that you've got all of the seeds. So what we're just going to do is we're going to go in and scoop those seeds just straight, scoop out the seeds onto the thing, so. We're going to leave as much of the flesh behind as we can. To be honest, I'm probably going to eat that in a second. I'll just scoop that up into the water. In fact, it might be quicker. I can probably just go straight into the water because these are so ripe, they're really easy. We've now got in this glass 1/2 centimetre of water and all the tomato seeds and some of the kind of fluid that surrounds them. And that's it. I'm going to put this to the side. Leave for about 2 to 3 days and let a mould develop in the glass. It's been 3.5 days since we left the tomato seeds in the water and set them aside, and as you can see they've started to develop a layer of mould as they've fermented and are ready to now be separated. So you should also be able to see inside the jar that the seeds are now kind of floating freely and not stuck to any of the gelatinous fluid that surrounds them when they're in the tomato. Now we're going to do 2 things in order to separate these seeds out. We're going to use a spoon to just skim off the top layer of mould, and then we're going to run the rest through the sieve to separate out the seeds from the rest of the liquid. And there we go, that is the seed. I'm going to leave them on a plate to dry, leave them out for just a couple of days, and then you can seal them away either in a little envelope, in a tight Tupperware box, or wherever you like to keep your seeds. Now one thing is, do use a plate and don't be tempted to use like a paper or kitchen towel, because the seeds as they dry will stick to the paper towel and then you'll potentially damage them as you're trying to unstick them when you're ready to store them. I only want to grow 2 or 3 of these plants again next year, so I've got more than enough seed here. If you want to grow loads of one of a particular variety, or even less perhaps, then you can adjust how much seed you save accordingly. That's it, we have now saved all the tomato seeds I'm going to save for this year. Next year I'm going to also try planting these, but few new varieties that I'm going to buy seeds in for. As always, if you've got any kind of hints or tips of ways that you like to do it that might be a little bit different, do let me know down in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube and follow me on Instagram if you want more regular updates. See you next week, guys!